After 101 paternity tests, I left with my daughter and disappeared without a trace. I had been secretly married to the movie star Philip for 5 years. He catered to my every need and treated me like a queen. But the day his true love returned to the country and saw our daughter, he didn't even flinch as he introduced her. "This is a child actress hired by the crew." His beloved calmly handed over a paternity test report and sneered at me. "Philip, stop lying to yourself. You know damn well whose kid this is. This manipulative, promiscuous woman has been deceiving you for years. Why won't you just wake up?" From that day on, Philip never came home again. My daughter was still too young to understand what had happened. She simply clung to me and asked in her baby voice, "Mommy, what does bastard mean?" Daddy said I'm a little bastard. I held back my tears, completely heartbroken. Later, I left behind a divorce agreement and took my daughter far, far away. Chapter 1. The 98th time I went to get a paternity test. The doctor didn't even bother to hide his disgust. "Mrs. Law, a mistake is a mistake. Admitting you cheated isn't going to kill you." A nurse nearby rolled her eyes. "Exactly. Playing the victim after being unfaithful. What a waste of how deeply Mr. Law loved you all these years." The report once again showed no biological relation between Philip Law and my daughter. I clenched my jaw and turned to go find Philip, only to be stopped by his agent at the door. "Sarah, aren't you tired of this already? Don't you know in your heart whether the kid is Philip's? When you were messing around behind his back, didn't you think about how things would end up? Philip's career is on the rise. Are you really trying to destroy him?" I had heard this kind of accusation too many times recently, but why should I admit to something I never did? What I couldn't figure out was, why did every lab across the country show no biological relation between Philip and our daughter? And ever since Philip stopped coming home, it had become harder and harder to get a proper sample from him. More than proving my innocence, what I cared about most was my daughter. She was so young. How could she be treated so unfairly? After being shut out once again, I dragged my exhausted body home. The moment my daughter heard my footsteps, she ran over with her arms open. She wrapped her arms around my neck and asked in that sweet, soft voice, "Mommy, what does bastard mean?" Daddy said I'm a little bastard. My heart shattered into pieces. I hugged her tightly and said gently, "Jessica is not a bastard. Jessica is Mommy's precious little girl. Didn't you say you wanted to go see the lions in Africa? Mommy will take you tomorrow, okay?" Her eyes sparkled as she nodded enthusiastically. "Yay, but I want to bring Daddy too." I paused for a moment, then gently told her, "Daddy's not coming. From now on, he might not be able to be with us anymore." The words had barely left my mouth when she burst into tears. She looked at me, eyes full of hurt, and whispered, "Is it because Jessica was bad that Daddy doesn't want her anymore? Jessica will be good. Jessica won't eat candy anymore. Jessica won't watch cartoons either." I choked up. My daughter had always been so well behaved. Like all kids, she loved sweets, but Philip had once said too much candy would cause cavities. Ever since then, she rarely touched it, no matter how much she craved it. Even when I offered, she would drool but still shake her head. She also loved watching cartoons. Philip used to hold her on his lap and watch with her, but ever since he saw that paternity report, he never came home again. Every night, she asked me when Daddy was coming back. I could only lie and say he was working late. I gathered every strand of Philip's hair I could find in the house. Every paternity test felt like torture, because I didn't know how to tell my daughter that she wasn't Philip's biological child. Holding her in my arms, I thought long and hard. In the end, I made a decision. Philip had proposed to me 101 times before I agreed to marry him. If after 101 paternity tests, he still refused to believe me and our daughter, then my daughter and I would disappear from his world for good. Chapter 2. The next day, when I went to the office to resign, a coworker grabbed my arm and whispered, "Sarah, the trending list is exploding. The couple I've been shipping finally appeared together in public." She was Philip's #1 fan. I didn't want to listen, but she had already shoved a photo in front of me. Look! A paparazzi caught movie king Law personally taking Sophia to an art exhibition yesterday. I heard that this heiress of the Sue family has been childhood sweethearts with Philip Law. He stayed pure for her all these years. Oh my God, if they ever get married and have a baby, Can you imagine how gorgeous the kid would be? Before she could finish her sentence, a familiar figure appeared in the distance. It was Philip, bringing Sophia for a company visit. This film company was part of the Law family's business empire, and I worked in crisis PR. When our eyes met, he acted like he didn't know me, just like always. That was what we agreed in the prenup when we got married in secret. Over all these years, very few people knew the real relationship between Philip and me. Many even said I had long since lost the title of Mrs. Law in everything but name. I clutched the resignation letter in my hand and turned to leave. But Sophia got to me first. She grabbed my wrist and lowered her voice. "Manager Sarah, how should we handle the gossip about me and your husband?" Philip had probably been staying with her lately. She had just returned to the country and wasn't familiar with anything here. It was the perfect time for her and Philip to rekindle their romance. I knew the kind of damage a first love could do. Even 5 years of marriage couldn't compete with a few words from her. But I didn't care about any of that. There was only one thing I wanted to know. So I asked her, "How did you know my daughter isn't Philip's biological child?" The smug expression on Sophia's face suddenly froze. She glanced at Philip in the distance, then gave me a soft, mocking smile. "Do you really think someone like Philip, who has an obsession with purity in relationships, would allow his wife to be used goods?" My chest tightened. How did she know about my past? Before I could speak, Sophia ran over to Philip with a smile, and, right in front of me, intimately linked her arm with my husband's. From her desk, a colleague shot me a look that said it all. "See? They're obviously more than just friends." I turned and walked toward the exit, not wanting to see any more, but just then, my daughter came running toward me. She threw herself into my arms, and then noticed Philip standing not far away. Her big, round eyes were filled with confusion. Why was her daddy holding hands with another woman? And in the blink of an eye, she ran over to him and wrapped her arms around his leg, calling out sweetly, "Daddy, Jessica missed you so much." There were employees all around. Philip's face stiffened as he said, "Little girl, didn't I tell you? When we're not on set, you're supposed to call me uncle." Jessica looked at me, puzzled, then ran back and asked softly, "Mommy, if I call Daddy uncle, will he start liking Jessica again?" My nose stung with emotion, but I could only grit my teeth and nod. She seemed so encouraged. She took my hand and walked back to Philip, obediently calling out, "Uncle." But Philip's expression only grew uglier. I took the opportunity to pluck a strand of his hair. He flinched and pulled back, muttering in a low, angry voice, "Keep your filthy hands off me. So it's okay for you to have other men, but I can't have someone new? You gave birth to that little bastard with another guy. I've helped raise her until now. And that's still not enough for you?" I didn't reply. I wasn't angry either. I simply held Jessica tightly and walked away in silence. With that strand of hair, I did the 99th paternity test. The result was still the same, no biological relation between Philip and my daughter. I bit down hard on my lip, trying desperately to suppress the breakdown rising in my chest. "Philip, you have 2 chances left." Chapter 3. It wasn't until I was on the way home that Philip's words finally hit me. "You had that bastard with another man." The anger and humiliation I'd held back for days finally exploded all at once. I rushed to the hotel where Philip was staying and kicked the door open. When Philip realized I had come looking for him, he frowned and said coldly, "If you want to know whether she's a bastard, why not test the ashes of that man you were with?" A chill swept through me. The man he was talking about was my childhood friend, but he had died saving me. We had always been close, but we never crossed the line. Why would Philip drag the dead into this? Why wouldn't he just believe me? The pain in my chest nearly suffocated me. Holding onto the door frame, I said through gritted teeth, "Philip, you can't run DNA tests on ashes, and even if you could, I would never let you insult him like that." Philip, usually so refined and composed, turned bright red in the face. He shouted, "Sarah, you're still hung up on your ex." Then, slam, he slammed the door shut. That night, I received a video from an unknown number. It was from Sophia. In the video, I saw Philip's back as he played bumper cars with a little boy. Philip had always loved racing. When we were dating, he used to say he wanted a son to teach how to drive race cars. I asked him, "What if it's a girl?" He replied, "If it's a girl, I'll protect her like I protect you." How could I let her do something so dangerous? The day I went into labor, I held his hand and said I had a feeling it was a boy. He kissed my forehead, his eyes full of tenderness. "Silly girl, I'll love them no matter what." But now, he was playing race cars with Sophia's son. Tears welled in my eyes. My daughter came over and gently hugged me. She tried to comfort me the way I usually comfort her. "Don't cry, Mommy. Jessica will grow up and buy candy for you." I held her tight in my arms as tears streamed down my face. The next day, I went to my daughter's kindergarten for a parent-child activity. To my surprise, Sophia was there too, with a little boy in tow. He peeked out shyly from behind her and looked at me but didn't say anything. The moment I saw his face, I froze. He looked just like Philip, like a miniature version of him from childhood. There had been rumors that Sophia had a child with Philip before she went abroad. But after knowing Philip for years, I never thought he was the type to sleep around. While I was lost in thought, a piercing scream suddenly came from the playground slide. It only lasted a few seconds, then silence. My heart dropped. Jessica rarely cried even when she scraped herself. This kind of scream meant something was seriously wrong. I rushed over. It turned out Sophia's son and Jessica had gotten into a fight. Her son had a broken hand, standing pale and crying loudly. Jessica's forehead was bleeding heavily. She had already passed out. I could barely breathe. I scooped her up and rushed to the hospital. Sophia was shaking with rage, yelling in front of the doctors and nurses. "Sarah, is your daughter rabid or what?" Her son bit his lip and let the doctor treat his hand without shedding a single tear. Sophia's shrill voice echoed through the corridor. I didn't have time for her. I pressed against the window, watching the doctors as they worked on my daughter. After what felt like forever, Jessica finally woke up. Her little body trembled in pain. She looked over from the bed and met my eyes. I forced a smile to comfort her, but my tears betrayed me. Jessica waved her little hand, trying to tell me not to cry. Sophia, still ranting beside me, shouted, "She hit my son over a toy? What did Victor ever do to her?" "Sarah, what kind of mother are you? If anything happens to Victor's hand, I'll make you pay." Just then, a familiar voice rang out from behind me. "Sarah, if you didn't know how to raise a child, you should never have given birth in the first place." It was Philip, but Jessica wasn't the kind of child to lash out for no reason. She was sweet and kind, the most perfect child I had ever seen. How could Philip doubt her? I turned around, ready to argue with him. Smack! Philip slapped me across the face. Hard. It was the first time he had ever hit me. Before we were married, he had once sworn, "If I, Philip, ever hit my wife for any reason in this life, I deserve to die a horrible death." I had stopped him from saying that back then, scolding him. "You can't even bear to speak harshly to me, how would you ever hit me?" But I was wrong. The burning pain on my face now was all too real. I said nothing. After Jessica's wounds were treated, I took her straight to a DNA testing center. I had hair samples from both Sophia's son and Philip, but I couldn't bring myself to hand them over. A terrible thought was forming in my head. Instead, I asked them to run a paternity test between me and Jessica. When I got the results, I stared at the words "no biological relationship" as my ears rang and my legs almost gave out. Jessica, somehow, had found a piece of ice and wrapped it in tissue, gently placing it against my cheek. Her soft little voice was full of concern and affection. "Mommy, are you feeling better?" My eyes burned, but I didn't want her to see me upset, so I quickly pulled her into my arms. "Whose child is this? And where is mine?" That was the 100th paternity test. "Philip, you only have one more chance left." Chapter 4. After we got home, my daughter took the initiative to explain what had happened. "Mommy, actually, I didn't fight with the boy. That lady hit my head with a rock, then smashed his hand with it too. Mommy, that lady was really scary." Jessica was scared. A surge of fury exploded inside me. Mess with anything, but don't mess with my kid. I had someone find out where Sophia was. Turns out she was visiting the film set. Perfect. Time to settle both accounts at once. When I showed up with my daughter in my arms, Sophia was watching Philip play with her son not far away. I set my daughter down, then walked right up and slapped her across the face. "Sophia, Try touching my daughter again and see what happens. Her lips started to bleed. Just as she was about to explode, Philip's voice boomed behind us. Sarah, have you lost your mind? Before I could even react, smack! Philip slapped me again, but this time, I didn't back down. I raised my hand and slapped him back twice. It was Sophia who hurt both her own son and our daughter. If you don't believe me, check the surveillance footage yourself. Philip was stunned, then roared. Are you crazy? What kind of mother would break her own son's hand? He raised his hand to strike me again, but in that moment, Jessica rushed over. She threw her tiny body against Philip, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. You can't hit mommy. You're a bad daddy. Jessica doesn't want you anymore. We don't want you anymore. My ears were ringing. Jessica's tiny body stood between me and everyone's judgmental stares. Even Philip froze for a second. He reached out to touch me, but Jessica shoved him away. Go away! Don't touch my mommy! She gently patted my swollen cheek, tears streaming down her face. Then she grabbed my hand and started pulling me toward the exit. Mommy, let's go. Jessica never wants to see Daddy again. Looking at her determined little face, I gave up completely. But just as we turned to leave, Philip suddenly grabbed my wrist. Chapter 5. His whole body trembled, voice low and cold. Sarah, if you can't even raise a child properly, then you don't deserve to wear that jade bracelet anymore. The jade bracelet on my wrist was the one Philip had put on me the day I married into the Law family. It was a family heirloom, a symbol of the Law family's matriarch. His words from back then still echoed in my ears. From today on, Sarah is the mistress of the Law family, my one and only wife. I had almost forgotten, but when I removed the bracelet and handed it to him, I suddenly noticed that Jessica's protection charm, which she always wore around her neck, was now hanging around Sophia's son. I knelt down and asked Jessica what happened. Fear filled her eyes. She never lied to me, so she whispered, I gave it to him. The lady took it when her son said it looked pretty. Before she finished, Sophia scoffed. That charm? I got that from a mountaintop temple 3 years ago for my son. Just because you lost something doesn't mean you can accuse me. Philip's already sour expression turned even darker. He grabbed Jessica's wrist and asked each word with force. Jessica, when did you learn how to lie? It was the first time he'd ever shouted at her. She froze in terror, clutching my clothes. She didn't even dare cry. Her voice stuttered. I didn't. I'm not lying. My heart shattered. I shouted at Philip. Enough. Before he could respond, I picked Jessica up and walked away without looking back. I wasn't going to give Philip any more chances. I was done. I didn't even know what I was feeling as I prepared for the final paternity test. This time, it was Victor's blood and Philip's hair. The wait felt like an eternity. The 101st paternity test confirmed my suspicion. Victor was Philip's biological son. I felt utterly drained. Philip, this really is the end for us. I booked our tickets, but just as I was packing up, Philip came home. He said he came to apologize. Victor told me just now, he accidentally lost the charm. He was scared Sophia would yell at him. So when he found another one, he claimed it. He said Jessica cried so hard, he wants to give it back to her. Sarah, why is someone else's kid more understanding than yours? Maybe you should reflect on that. Philip kept talking. I barely responded. Seeing my indifference, he awkwardly said, It's late. Let's rest. I'll go shower first. Was he planning to spend the night? But Jessica was already scared of him. Just as I was about to kick him out, Sophia's call came through. Philip, Victor has acute gastroenteritis. I don't know what to do. Philip's expression changed. He didn't even grab his jacket before rushing out the door. The next morning, as we boarded our flight, I glanced back toward the terminal entrance. Jessica tugged on my sleeve, her voice full of righteous anger as she waved her tiny fists. Don't worry, Mommy. If that bad daddy chases us, Jessica will beat him up for you. I smiled and touched the bandage on her forehead, then sent Philip a digital copy of the divorce papers. Moments later, his call came through. I didn't answer. I simply turned off my phone and walked onto the plane without looking back. Chapter 6. Philip, in disbelief, Dialed my number again. The cold, automated voice came through the receiver. Sorry. The number you dialed is currently unavailable. I had never ignored his calls before. This was the first time. Clutching his phone tightly, his knuckles turned pale. He muttered to himself. Divorce? She's really angry? But nothing ever happened between me and Sophia. Sarah, what right do you have to be mad? Frowning, he sent me several messages. There has never been a divorce in the Law family. Don't think you can use this to threaten me. Sarah, after everything, you don't even have a word of apology for me? If you admit you were wrong right now, I'll come home tonight. But the messages went unanswered. Next to him, his agent scoffed. What? Sarah wants a divorce? Hilarious. That woman's really getting too full of herself. Philip, if Miss Sue is interested in you, then why not just? Philip shot her a glare like a dagger. My personal life is none of your business. It was that same agent who had forced me to sign the prenuptial agreement back then. She said that if the public found out Philip was married, it would damage his career, for the sake of his future. I drew up the agreement myself. At first, Philip refused. He wanted the whole world to know I was Mrs. Law, but he could never say no to anything I asked of him. That was the day the seed of doubt was planted. Philip thought I didn't want to go public because I still had feelings for my childhood friend. He had seen me sobbing uncontrollably at his funeral. He assumed it was love lost, and so he started to doubt himself. How could a living man compete with a dead one? It became a thorn in his heart. That's why he had been so devoted to me all these years, trying so hard to make me fall in love with him. But even by nightfall, I hadn't responded to any of his messages. Philip became restless. He called me hundreds of times, but my phone remained off. After filming Wrapped, Philip felt a mix of anger and unease. He drove straight home. The moment he opened the front door, his breath caught in his throat. The house was empty. Everything was gone. Only his daughter's doodles on the wall proved that anyone had ever lived there. Philip leaned against the wall, frozen, his mind blank. Before he could even collect his thoughts, a trending news headline knocked the wind out of him. Hashtag Philip plays bumper cars with his biological son. Hashtag movie King Law secretly married with a child, confirmed. Hashtag Philip Law's image collapses. Fans in tears. He rushed back to the company that very night. The whole place was in chaos, everyone waiting anxiously for him. Sophia ran up the moment she saw him, trying to apologize. Philip, I'm so sorry. I don't even know how this happened. I don't know which paparazzi had the guts to. Before she could finish, Philip cut her off coldly. That day, the entire racetrack was booked out. Not even a mosquito could have gotten in. Sophia, whatever we had ended when you left the country, got married, and had a child. You and I both have our own families now. Stop clinging to the past. Sophia's expression froze for a moment, but then she gritted her teeth and said, What if Victor really is your son? Philip frowned. What did you say? Sophia handed him a paternity test result. I didn't leave the country to get married. I went through hell just to have your child. She paused, watching his stunned expression, and continued. Just like Sarah, we women, for love, we're willing to do the craziest things. Philip looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He kept whispering, Impossible. Just then, his assistant rushed in. Mr. Law, without manager Sarah, our PR team doesn't know how to handle this. We need your guidance. Philip clenched his jaw. What do you mean without manager Sarah? The assistant looked awkward. She resigned a while ago, on the day you brought Miss Sophia to visit the company. A sharp pain struck Philip in the chest. So, she had already planned to leave? With trembling hands, he sent me a message. Sarah, where are you? Let's talk. But just then, his lawyer called. Mr. Law, your wife said if you don't sign the papers within a week, she'll authorize me to file a lawsuit. If this ends up in court, your image in the industry will definitely take a hit. I suggest you sign quietly. Philip cursed loudly. Get the hell out! The Law family doesn't do divorce. Meanwhile, I was watching lions and baby tigers on the African savanna with my daughter. News updates kept popping up on my phone, stories about Philip and Sophia's relationship. I had zero interest in them. After our trip, I returned to my hometown. I planned to open a dessert shop. My daughter loved candy and little cakes. I wanted to make them just for her. I had also asked someone to help me search for her biological parents, but there was still no news. Even though I didn't know who they were, I was determined to give her a sweet and complete childhood. If her parents didn't want her, then I did. As I was busy renting the storefront, Jessica ran up holding a phone. "Mommy, Bad Daddy posted your marriage certificate online." I was a little surprised. Philip actually made it public at a time like this? Just then, a knock sounded at the door. I quickly got up to answer it, and there he was. Philip. Chapter 7. I frowned slightly as he spoke in a hoarse voice, softly asking, "Why? Why are you doing this to me?" I was a bit surprised. Wasn't the divorce agreement clear enough? Or had the lawyer not informed him about it yet? Looking at the weary face in front of me, I replied coldly, "Just sign the papers, using me to take the fall for your true love." Classic Philip. Philip stared at me for a moment, then finally realized what I was referring to. When rumors swirled about him and Sophia, he suddenly posted our marriage certificate online, clearly pushing me into the fire. Why should I be the scapegoat? Clenching his jaw, Philip fixed his steely eyes on me. "I wanted to go public before. You refused. Now another woman's trying to steal your place, and I'm not even allowed to fight back." I looked at him in disbelief. Was he seriously trying to say this was for my sake? I let out a cold laugh and reached out to close the door, but Philip stopped it with his hand. He leaned against the doorway, speaking each word slowly and firmly. "This time, I was wrong. I shouldn't have stayed away from home for so long out of spite. Sarah, can we not get divorced?" Before I could reply, my daughter suddenly charged out from inside, wielding her little peachwood sword. "Bad Daddy, go away! Don't touch my mommy!" She jabbed at him over and over with a fierce expression on her face. That wooden sword was something Philip had made for her himself. She had loved it so much back then. I still remembered her hugging me and saying, "When Jessica grows up, she wants to be a hero so she can protect mommy." My sweet little girl really had kept her promise. While Philip was still stunned, I shut the door firmly. Not 2 seconds later, the sound of a heart-wrenching sob broke out from the other side. It was the first time I had ever heard Philip cry. But strangely, I felt nothing inside. A few days later, I finally uncovered the truth about Jessica's background. She had been abandoned. Her biological parents didn't want her. I let out a silent breath of relief. I'd been afraid her birth parents would show up and try to take her away. I couldn't let her go, even if she wasn't my biological child. I loved her just the same. But at the end of the file, there was something that shocked me even more. The child I had carried for 10 months and given birth to was Victor. He was the son Philip and I had together. The moment I learned this, I didn't hesitate. I took Jessica with me to find Victor. After several days of observation, I realized that outside of preschool hours, Victor was constantly followed by bodyguards, like someone was afraid he'd run away. The old man at the preschool gate was an old friend of mine. I asked him to let me and Jessica in. That's how we found Victor sitting all alone in a corner, watching the other kids play with a look of envy. He kept scratching at his arm, and when I looked closer, I saw scars that had scabbed over, fighting back tears. I brought Jessica over and gently asked, "Victor, how did you get those scars?" He stared at me, refusing to answer at first, but with a little comfort from both me and Jessica, he suddenly burst into tears. It turned out Sophia had been abusing him for years. His arms and body were covered in wounds. Before the old scars could heal, she would leave new ones. That's why even when he had a fractured hand, he hadn't dared to cry. He was terrified Sophia would beat him. She forced him to call her mom in public. But at home, he was made to sleep in a dog crate and eat spoiled food. I clenched my fists tightly, anger surging in my chest like a storm. But all I did was gently stroke his head and whisper, "Victor, would you like to come with me?" Chapter 8. Victor looked at me, his eyes full of tears, seeming hesitant. Jessica immediately stepped forward and grabbed his hand. "Brother, I have so many toys. You can have them all. Mommy also makes really yummy cupcakes. Come with us, okay?" Victor finally nodded and said softly, "Ma'am, I want to go home and get the toy car Jessica gave me. It's her favorite one." My nose tingled as I held back the tears and nodded immediately. "Okay, Victor, Good boy. Let's meet back here tomorrow. As we left the kindergarten, I saw a familiar figure. Philip had clearly been waiting for a while. He walked up to me, guilt heavy in his eyes. Sarah. I was wrong. Victor, he's my child. I glanced at him and said calmly. Yes, I know. How did you find out? Philip looked stunned, then quickly tried to explain. Sarah, please, believe me. I never touched Sophia. I don't even know how she got my sperm. So, he really had no idea. I gave a cold chuckle and walked right past him, carrying Jessica away. The next day, I made a little toy car-shaped cake and arrived early at that familiar corner in the kindergarten. Jessica was in a great mood, humming and dancing around. After a while, she tugged on my hand and asked, Mommy, can brother call you Mommy too someday? Warmth filled my chest. I stroked her hair and kissed her cheek. Aren't you afraid of having to share Mommy's love? Jessica immediately shook her head, speaking righteously. No, that bad woman threw a rock at my head. Brother got hurt because he protected me. At that, my eyes welled up completely. These two sweet children, they're both my babies. But time passed, and Victor still didn't show up. My worry grew stronger. Jessica and I waited until it got dark, but there was still no sign of him. I didn't hesitate. I drove straight to find Sophia, but no one knew where she was. With no other choice, I went to Philip. He said he didn't know where Sophia or Victor were either. Seeing my growing panic, Philip seemed to realize something and asked cautiously, Why do you care so much about Victor? I didn't even bother answering. I tossed 2 paternity test reports at him. Philip gripped the reports. His body began to tremble uncontrollably. Victor is our child? He's our child? He turned to look at Jessica, then suddenly burst into laughter, but his tears came faster than the smile. He looked utterly unhinged, his face twisted in some strange mix of joy and heartbreak. Chapter 9. I went straight to the police, but Sophia and Victor had been missing for less than 24 hours, so the police couldn't file a case yet. So I pulled every connection and resource I had to search for him. Jessica clutched my hand, trying to comfort me. Don't worry, Mommy. Brother will be okay. Before she finished, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it without hesitation. Sophia's cold voice came through. Sarah, your reach is impressive. I guess you're lucky to see your son again in this lifetime. But hey, kids are just tools for climbing the social ladder. You really don't know how to use them, do you? Well then, let me show you. Of course it was Sophia. Ever since Philip made our marriage certificate public, she'd become a laughingstock in the city. People even started questioning if Victor was really her child. The Sue family, tired of her stubbornness, finally gave up on her. Sophia had lost everything and had nowhere to go. Naturally, she wouldn't let me off the hook. After hanging up, she sent me a video. Victor was unconscious, dumped beside a coastal cliff, and Sophia held a sharp knife in her hand. That cliff, it was infamous, known as Death Point. They said anyone who fell from there would be swallowed by monstrous waves in seconds. No one had ever survived. I drove there at top speed. As soon as I arrived, I saw her with the knife pressed against Victor's neck. Victor didn't cry, but when he saw me, the light returned to his dim eyes. I think I saw him mouth something. Mommy, holding back tears. I quickly covered Jessica's eyes and whispered, Jessica, be good and stay here. Count to 100, and Mommy will be back. But she gripped my hand tightly, eyes full of fear. Okay. Jessica will be good. But Mommy, please don't lie to Jessica. Jessica only has you now. I pulled her into a hug, and the tears fell uncontrollably. Jessica, if Mommy doesn't come back, what will you and Victor do? I wiped away my tears and got out of the car. Behind me, I heard Jessica counting softly. To the sound of her tiny voice, I pulled out a knife and walked toward Sophia, step by step. As I approached, Sophia noticed the knife in my hand. She was briefly startled, then laughed mockingly. What now, Sarah? Gonna fight me? I'm warning you, one step closer and your son dies right in front of you. I continued walking slowly, giving her a strange, calm smile. How about this? I'll trade my life for my son's. How's that? Sophia looked stunned, then burst into hysterical laughter. Oh wow. Sarah, you really are smart. If you kill yourself, maybe Philip will finally fall for me. Then I'll be Mrs. Law after all. I stopped a meter away from her. The sea wind roared around us. Just half a step more, and I'd fall into the abyss. Waves crashed below like beasts howling. Sophia's eyes turned bloodshot. She screamed, "Do it, Sarah! Stab yourself in the heart. If you die, I'll let your son go." And just then, I heard a familiar voice cry out from behind, "Sarah, please, don't." It was Philip. Jessica was behind him, holding my phone, sobbing uncontrollably. "Daddy, please save Mommy. I don't hate you anymore. Just save her." I took a deep breath and said to them both, "Don't let the children see this." Before anyone could react, I raised the glinting blade and stabbed it straight into my heart. Chapter 10. Sophia watched with wide eyes as the front of my shirt bloomed with bright red. In her stunned gaze, I slowly collapsed to the ground. The world seemed to freeze in that moment. Even the children's cries faded away. Philip held his daughter tightly, covering her eyes. Frozen like a statue, Sophia stared at my corpse, her whole body trembling with excitement. She slowly lowered the knife from Victor's neck and walked toward me, then kicked me, twice. Realizing I was truly lifeless, she burst into laughter. "Dead? Ha ha ha. She's really dead? Wasn't she supposed to be so tough? Didn't she survive childbirth when even the doctors gave up? And now she dies just like that? Ha ha ha." "Philip, did you see that? Sarah killed herself. I didn't lay a finger on her. Now we can finally be a happy family of 4. Before she could finish, I suddenly extended my leg and kicked her hard, completely off guard. Sophia stumbled backward toward the cliff. Just before she fell, I tossed a retractable knife and a blood bag right in front of her eyes. "What? You thought you were the only one who could pull a switcheroo?" Her curses were swallowed by the roar of the waves. I didn't bother looking again. I stepped forward and scooped up Victor, who was trembling uncontrollably. Jessica ran over and threw herself into my arms, bawling. I held both children close as I stood up and met Philip's red, tear-swollen eyes. He must have been genuinely terrified. In the moment, blood sprayed everywhere. I had seen a kind of rage and despair in his eyes I'd never seen before. He definitely would have killed Sophia on the spot. But I didn't expect him to save me. Some things, you just have to do yourself. Sophia had played a long game just to become Mrs. Law, but she had underestimated how much Philip loved me. And maybe, she died never truly understanding why Philip loved me so deeply. Because once, I saved his life. That was a secret between Philip and me. No one knew why the wealthy heir of the Law family had fallen for me at first sight. As I walked toward the car with both children in my arms, Philip couldn't hold back anymore and blocked my path. "Wife, can't you forgive me for the kid's sake? I shouldn't have doubted you. I don't care anymore whether the child is biologically mine. If you love them, if you want to raise them, I'll follow your lead, okay? I know I was wrong. I know. All I ask is that you just look at me again." I gently placed both children into the car and turned to him. "Philip, you're not worthy." His face turned ashen. He stood there stunned for a few seconds, then dropped to his knees with a thud. "No, no. Sarah, please give me one more chance. I really can't live without you." "Another chance?" I let out a laugh, genuine and hollow. When I went for DNA tests again and again, I already gave him chances. Back then, he had no idea the soul-crushing pain I was enduring. And now, he wanted another chance? What a joke. I left him kneeling there and got in the car. With the kids, I drove far away from that place, and far away from that man. A week later, I received the signed divorce papers. Philip had transferred all of his assets to me. It was unnecessary, clearly just a gesture to win me back. All these years of marriage, I had never given up my career. I had enough savings to raise both children on my own. But since he was offering it for free, why not take it? That night, after the divorce certificate arrived, Philip called me. "Sarah, the reason I was good to Sophia was because of Victor. He looks so much like me." But I was scared. I was afraid he really was my son, and I was afraid you'd think I cheated. Before he could finish, I interrupted him. "But I chose to believe you. All this time, I was searching for the truth. When love isn't enough to bridge the gap, facts are the only answer. But Philip, you never trusted me the way I trusted you. On the other end, I heard the sound of a grown man sobbing uncontrollably. I knew Philip regretted everything. He had messed up, badly. Even though he knew I would have given my life for him, he still chose to doubt whether I had lingering feelings for another man. From the doorway, I heard Victor and Jessica's sweet little voices. Happy New Year, Mommy! The clock on the wall pointed to midnight. Outside the window, fireworks lit up the sky. It was a brand new year. The two kids walked over holding a small cake, smiling adorably. Just then, a screech of brakes echoed from the phone. Philip's voice trembled on the other end. Sarah. I'm sorry, but I really did love you. Then, a deafening explosion roared in my ear. Silence followed. I coldly hung up the phone. Turning, I blew out the candle on the cake, then kissed each child on the cheek. Happy New Year, my darlings.